Buddy, welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling here with you a little bit later on Saturday than what we normally do. I was out at work doing some calling, but good to be here. Sterling, how you doing on this fine Saturday?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right, man. It's a busy time of year right now, so I'm tired.
I,
But
I
we got
feel you in
football
that one.
tomorrow, so I got something to look forward to.
Without a doubt, and obviously
Yeah.
coming in to this weekend, obviously the Thursday night game. That is what we always typically start the schedule off with, is where we saw the Seahawks take on the Cowboys in what was an absolute shootout where the Cowboys ended up winning 41 to 35. And it's weird to say, but Dak Prescott right now is kind of leading the MVP race.
Yeah, and I mean it's purely on stats. I don't know. I don't think he should be the guy that wins it, in my opinion. And I do think this Dallas Cowboys team is still going to fall apart. The fact that that defense let Seattle hang in it so much, that's concerning. Like when you start going up against the teams like the 49ers and the Eagles and the Chiefs, that
It's a
that
much
kind
different
of
ball
game,
game.
exactly, it's not gonna fly. I would even put the Lions in there maybe for the NFC, though they had a rough week last week. It's tough to say, man. I just I'm not sold on Dak Prescott being the MVP at this point.
Yeah, and neither am I, but and that's kind of why I said like it feels really weird to say
Yeah.
that like he's kind of the MVP favorite right now, but it's really hard to argue with his numbers. He's completing his passes at 70%. He's 26 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions, so he's drastically dropped
Mhm.
his interception rate. He's still throwing a couple, but you know what? Like he's a lot better than what he was the previous couple of years of where he was at a much higher number. And you know what? Like it we don't really like it, but like he's doing a phenomenal job. Tony Pollard over the last couple weeks has decided, "Oh, wait. I am supposed to be this good running back. I'm playing on the franchise tag for a reason. This is why." And so he's started to really boost up, but CeeDee Lamb, my goodness, he has just performed amazing feats of work so far this year and has truly looked like that number one wide receiver. But Bland, the cornerback for the Cowboys, it's 5 touchdowns that he's brought back from
Yep.
picks, and he has 8 on the season. Dude is playing like the defensive player of the year right now, and if the season were to end today, that would be my vote because he like that is so impressive. Granted, he's giving up yards, but you know what? The fact that we have a DB, who at I think it was a week ago there was only 12 people in the NFL who had more receiving touchdowns than he did. You're kind of sitting
Yeah.
back going like, that's impressive.
Oh yeah, he's been setting records really, and in a short period of time. There's going to be people out there come the end of the season, wherever he ends up, that are going to go, oh well, yeah, but it's a 17 game season now. It's not the same as when it was only 14. But it's like, but I mean, the dude did it in 12.
Yeah,
So I mean, argue all you want. That's where his number was at 12 weeks. And so even if he doesn't get any more, like you got to give him the credit for that record at this point for sure.
oh,
And I agree. Like we don't see secondary players often win the defensive player of the year, at least not lately. And he's got to be in the top three right now.
without a doubt, him, T.J. Watt, Miles Garrett are kind of the three that I would say are running
Hmm.
away as the favorites here at the moment. But yeah, this Dallas
Can't forget
defense,
Daniel Hunter as well. He's been
true,
playing lights out.
true.
Uh, that Monday nighter notwithstanding, he
As I
didn't
have my
he didn't
shit
play
eating
great.
grim on my
Yeah.
face. Yeah, without a doubt, and obviously we'll chat about that a little bit later. But yeah, the Chiefs DK Metcalf, really turned that secondary into his own personal
Mhm.
play toy, and this was probably the best game that we've seen from DK all year long, which is nice to see because we thought he was going to be a lot more than what he's shown so far this year.
Well, yeah, he had to be. I remember we talked at the start of the season and we were discussing that we really thought this combo of DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba was going to be the new 1-2 in the league that was going to rise up, and they haven't been able to do that and put themselves into that top five receiver duo spotlight like
We
I thought
initially
they were
thought,
going to.
without a doubt, and plus also having why am I forgetting
Tyler
the
Lockett.
thank you, Tyler Lockett there would have just made
Yeah.
it. And granted, they've all been good. It's just they haven't been lights out good in
Yeah, they haven't
terms.
been game changing good.
Yeah,
Whereas, it feels like it. I mean, really, they were one touchdown away from beating the Cowboys, and
really
that
were.
was in the Cowboys' house.
Yep.
It's not like this was in Seattle. If that game had been in Seattle, I think it would have gone a very different way
It,
with how poorly that Dallas defense played.
without a doubt, and Dallas's defense, they're gonna really have to make sure going into the stretch, kind of like what you
Mhm.
were alluding to before, is that once you get to the playoffs, it's a whole different animal. And we've seen Dak Prescott struggle in the playoffs, and whether that's here nor there. But moving forward into our first Saturday or Sunday game, where we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Tennessee Titans, and for me, I think the Indianapolis Colts are probably my favorites in this one. I just think the Titans have looked bad this year. They just can't really get much consistency at the quarterback spot going for
Mhm.
this particular game. And as much as you want this team to, or you think this team is going to do better and better with the weapons that they have, I think the Colts, they're just more consistent. I know Jonathan Taylor, he banged up his hand, so he's going to kind of be a question mark. But even then, when he wasn't there for the first start of the year, it's not like he was missed too much. And so I think
And
just the Colts going to take this one.
yeah, I do believe Jonathan Taylor is out for. He's set to miss, I think, 3 weeks. He's having minor surgery on that thumb
Yeah.
to repair it, and so that being said, Zach Moss was serviceable when he filled in, so I don't have any real worries about their running game at that point. And you said it perfectly. This Titans team just has not been impressive all season. There was that little bit of a spark partway through when they switched to Will Levis, and they were showing, and it looked like maybe they were going to turn things around, and then it fell right back off. And
Yeah.
so I have no faith in them at this point. As much as I would love to see the Colts lose, just because my team's got a game coming up against them that's going to be very important. I do agree. I think the Colts are going to win this one.
Yeah, and so taking a look here at the actual line, it's currently the Indianapolis Colts are favored by 1 point. So I do like the Colts in this one. I think they're definitely going to win by more points. I think probably
Yeah.
closer to a field goal, if not more. Uh, and yeah, so for me, I'm taking the Indianapolis Colts on the betting line.
Yeah, I agree completely. I expect them to win by somewhere in between that field goal and touchdown range. It's not going to be a 1 point game that's decided on a field goal.
Yeah. Now moving over to the next game where we have the Los Angeles Chargers at home taking on the New England Patriots. Or pardon me, the Patriots are at home. Chargers heading into New England to take on the Patriots. So Sterling, take it away, my friend.
I don't think it matters which of these teams is at home. The Patriots are one of the worst teams this season. Um, the Chargers finally get themselves a win. They finally get a bounce back here because I see no reason that the Patriots are gonna be able to pull this one out. I know I sent you a meme graphic about next Thursday's game where Amazon couldn't even figure out which player to highlight
So
when
they
they
just
play
put
against the
Bill
Steelers.
Belichick up
So they
there.
used Bill Belichick
Yeah.
as the highlight, and it's like this is sad when you're using a 70-year-old coach as your highlight for your team.
Yeah.
Not a good look. So
No.
the Chargers easily will win this one. Um, and I mean, I'm not 100% sure what the spread on it is, but if
Minus
it's,
5 for the Chargers.
then yeah, they will beat that spread as well because I was expecting it to be 9 to 12 points they win by. With how explosive this Chargers offense is, I think they're going to put up a lot.
With how clusterfuckery the Patriots have been this year, they have
Mhm.
also shown moments in games of where they can be competitive. Not lately, but the Chargers are also one of those teams that just allows bad teams to stay in games. And I think this game is actually going to be a little bit closer than what we all think it's going to be. So I'm going to take the Chargers going to get the money line win. I do think the Chargers are going to win this one, but I think the Patriots are going to keep it close within a field goal. So I'm actually going to take the Patriots at +5.5. Now moving over to the Detroit Lions going into New Orleans to take on the Saints. This game, the line is currently sitting at -4.5 in favor of the Detroit Lions. I am picking the Lions in this game, and this is going to be a really good test for this Lions defense because they have not been as good as you would expect or hope them to be this year. Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears exploited them. Then Green Bay came in and also took advantage of that weak defense, and I think New Orleans, they have a pretty explosive offense at times. If Derek Carr can get to his weapons, that's going to be the key. But I think this game is probably going to be a lot closer than what is going to be expected. I think the Saints cover the spread here, but I do think the Lions win.
Yeah, this is an important game for both of these teams because that NFC South is still wide open. It's looking like we're looking at a losing record having a home game in the playoffs
Yep.
for the NFC at this point. But yeah, it's real big for the Saints and the Lions. They have to have a bounce back game here. You know, they've struggled within their own division. They've been good otherwise,
Yep.
and so they need to keep that up. They do still need to sort out whatever this issue is playing against their division rivals, but right now that's not a concern. Right now the Saints are the concern, and they need to make sure they're going out there putting up points, and then, as you said, the defense needs to step up. Because once we get to the playoffs, we talk about it all the time. Scoring points will get you to the playoffs. The defense is what's going to win you that championship. And
Yep.
if the defense cannot find a way to rise up to that same level that their offense is on, then they're going to get destroyed by teams like the 49ers, the Eagles, and even the Cowboys with how explosive they've been. So yeah, the Lions have some work to do on defense for sure.
Yeah,
But I am also taking Lions for money line, and I do think it will be close, like you said. So the Saints will cover the spread.
yeah. Now moving over to what I think we would officially call probably the toilet bowl game of the week, where we have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New York Jets. Sterling, take it away.
I don't know. Like I know a lot of people have been down on the Falcons, but I have not hated them as much as everybody else has this year. So I don't know if this is the toilet bowl of the week myself. You know, that Chargers Patriots game is pretty close to rivaling that, I would say. Um, that being said, you know, Bijan Robinson finally involved in the game last week, and it worked for them. You know, the Falcons are in the driver's seat in this NFC South now. All they have to do is keep winning, and they take the division. You know, they've got the Saints and the Bucks looking at them from behind like it's
And don't forget
they.
the Panthers from behind too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, they could still come and win make it the playoffs in that NFC South maybe. I mean, isn't the best record 5-6 right now?
Yep, it's tied for five
Yeah,
and six.
exactly. And so I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Panthers could still win that division, as insane as that is. Sounds like. I know you're shaking your head. It's not going to happen.
Oh
We
no,
both know it's not
I,
going to
I
happen.
hope the
Everybody
Panthers
out there
continue to
knows.
lose every single game for the rest of the
Yeah,
year. Yeah,
no, exactly. But like the fact that there's still an outside shot and we can't write them off for the playoffs yet is just bizarre. But what do we expect from that NFC South division, man?
yeah.
You know, it was good for 2 years while Tom Brady was there, and now it's right back into the dumpster.
Well, it was
Um,
it was good when Tom Brady was there, but just pretty much solely because Tom Brady was there. Every other
well, that's
team, it
my
was
point.
like you're looking at it going like, you suck. You don't even deserve to play. And
Hmm.
then Brady was like, I'm just gonna casually walk through this division like it's nothing.
Exactly.
Yep.
But that being said, I mean, they got Bijan Robinson involved in the
Yep.
pass game, in the run game. We saw what this player was drafted for. We saw why he was such a highly rated running back.
Yep.
If the Falcons can continue to call games in that way and keep using their star talents properly, you know, use Pitts as the star he is, use Robinson as the star he is, instead of using them as the decoys to drop other plays, which makes no fucking sense. Like, use your stars. If they do that, then as I've said all year, this Falcons team has the potential to be good because
Yep.
Ritter is not terrible. Like he's not great by any means, but I mean, he's better than Levis. He's better than Tannehill was. You know, better in my opinion than Carr in his unreliability. Like I still like him more than Baker Mayfield. You know, I'm not a Mayfield fan, so
I
like
wouldn't probably go that far, but you know.
the Falcons haven't. No, Baker Mayfield just looks good this year because he has a good wide receiver. That's always what it is. When he's got a good wide receiver, they make him look good. But I'm taking the Falcons in this game. You know, the Giants, sure, they've won a couple here and there, and yes, I picked them last week to beat the Patriots because the Patriots are dog shit.
Not
And
Giants, Jets.
no, it was the Giants that
No,
played the
I'm
Patriots.
saying, but the Jets are playing the Falcons.
Oh, this is Jets.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, I thought it was Giants. My bad, my
Yep.
bad. Either way, you know, it's what Tim Boyle playing then.
The
That
dude who
doesn't
can't
concern me,
throw a football. Yeah. No,
right?
I also
Well,
have the Falcons. This is
mhm.
-2, so you're picking the Falcons. Do you think they will cover
It's -2.
for
I
the
don't think the Jets.
Falcons?
Yeah, I don't think the Jets are going to be able to keep it within 2 points. I'll be surprised if they can score more than 10.
Yeah, for me, I just look at this team. I hate Arthur Smith. I think he needs to be fired last year.
Yeah.
Like you can't draft Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and then Bijan Robinson, and then just look at them and go, how do I not scheme you into this game? Granted, he got Bijan Robinson into the last game. It's like, yeah, great. What about the other 2 first-round picks you've used? Where are those guys? You've essentially wasted Kyle Pitts' career so far. Drake London is sitting there going like, I was a top 10 pick. Please
Yep.
throw me the ball. I'm one of the most
Well,
athletic wide receivers in the league. Please do something.
weren't all three of these guys top 10 picks?
Yeah,
Where was Pitts taken?
he was
Like,
picked at pick number 4. He's the
yeah,
highest
so I mean,
ever tight end draft pick ever.
yeah, so like all three of these guys are top 10 picks, and you're using them as decoys in your offense. So yeah, I agree. Smith needs to go. Like he
Yeah.
is the root of the problem there. You know, as we've talked about with a few teams around the league, the coaching is what's holding some of these really talented teams back. Where we could like I said at the start of the year, I felt like the Falcons should have been able to run away with this division, and they haven't yet. But now's their chance.
Yep.
They're in first place. They don't have to worry about the other teams, you know, beating them out. It it's all up to them now.
Yep.
Now's the chance. Now is when you highlight your stars and you go on a run if you're the Falcons.
Yeah, and now just talking about the Jets, man. This team, like going from Zach Wilson to now Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle in his career has been horrible. Like if
Yeah.
you look at Tim Boyle's college stats, and I really recommend everyone taking a look at Tim Boyle's college stats because you are going to sit back and go, this guy was drafted into the
Mhm.
NFL. And you're going, how? I'm not even going to say it because I might projectile vomit just
Yeah.
thinking about how this dude has not only got drafted into the NFL, but has managed to stay in the league. It is ridiculous. It is sickening. And you could see it in Zach Wilson's face last week. He was loving watching Tim Boyle just absolutely be terrible. He's like, listen, I wasn't even that bad. Like, this is what you guys wanted. You guys wanted to see someone else. And for the Jets, unfortunately, it's just not going to be something where they can really get it right now. The only way
No.
I can see the Jets winning this game is if their defense just takes it to a whole nother level. But unfortunately, I think they're tired, man. They are tired, and Aaron Rodgers not going to play this week. He apparently could play next week. Who knows? It is.
I think that's just silly myself. I understand his thinking early in the season when the injury first happened, and he's like, if we're in a spot to make the playoffs, then he'll play. They really, with how bad it is, and if they lose again this week, they really don't have a shot at making the playoffs unless they run the line and then have a bunch of teams lose key games down the
Yeah.
stretch here, which
They're
it's
currently
just
the
too much
second
of a
worst team
gamble,
in the AFC, and
right?
I think the unfortunate thing is for the Jets, they will play Aaron Rodgers, but you and I are kind of sitting here going like, what would be the purpose of that? If he's healthy, sure, but you're probably actually going to end up winning games with Aaron Rodgers that are ultimately meaningless, and you're just going to take your draft pick, which is a top
Yeah.
8 draft pick currently, and you're likely going to get into what, the 15 range, which you're taking yourself out of prime offensive lineman territory, defensive players, just
Hmm.
extra helpful. But I'm also taking the Falcons in this line. I think -2. They're going to be able to cover that though.
Yeah. And which at that point, like, you'd think Aaron Rodgers has got to look at it at some point and go, okay, you know what? There is no point in me playing this year. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to be back week one next year because they do still have him on contract for another season.
Yep.
And you take that big, good draft pick and you figure out who it is you need to fix other parts of this team because, you know,
Offensive
we
line.
assume if he stays healthy, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a good quarterback for you next year.
Yep. He is 40 years old, so it's going to be really interesting. But moving forward, because we've
Yes.
bashed the Jets and Falcons enough, going into your game of the week, we have the Cardinals taking on the Steelers. And please take it away, my good friend.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last week that I thought it would be really fucking funny, but I didn't believe it would happen. And sure enough, one game without Matt Canada, and they broke the 58 game long streak of not being able to gain 400 yards.
Yep.
One fucking game is all it took to get over 400 yards. Kenny Pickett was just shy of his first 300-yard game of the season. The running game looked good. The like Matt Canada had to go. I'm so
Yeah.
glad he's gone. Like fuck. This week the Cardinals have been looking good. You know, Kyler Murray came back. He's looking like old Kyler. Uh, my bigger concern this weekend is James Conner. He's returning home. You know, he grew up in Pittsburgh, played in Pittsburgh. You know, battled cancer while he was here, and it just he's going to have a lot to play for this week, and I think that's going to be something to watch for with how weak this Steelers run defense has been, you know, since we're missing some linebackers. Beyond that, I do expect this offense to continue to grow. You know, they found the middle of the field without Matt Canada. They discovered, hey, we can throw it over the middle. Getting Fryer moved back really helped with that as well. He had a great day. I think we see Kenny Pickett's first 300-yard passing game of the year this week, and I think the Steelers will make pretty easy work of this Cardinals team, which is one of the worst in the league.
I think the Steelers are going to win this one. The point spread is -6.5. I'm assuming you're thinking that the Steelers are covering that.
Um, I don't know. No, I don't think they will. I think the Cardinals will be able to hang just because our run game is so hurting right now. And you know, you got to remember this is Kyler Murray. He can run around as well, and he's got a couple of good receivers in Hollywood Brown, you know, and it. I can't remember who his number two is there, but he's got options. So I do expect the Cardinals to hang, but I don't expect it to be a nail biter and a stressful game for Steelers fans to watch. You know, it's not going to be one of those ones where we're hoping for Kenny Pickett to win the game in the fourth quarter. I expect us to be leading throughout with the Cardinals just trying to keep up. But I
Yeah.
do think the Cardinals will cover the spread.
Yeah, I also think the Cardinals will cover the spread. I think that it was huge that the Steelers were able to get their first 400-yard game in 58 games. It's funny how the last game before hiring Matt Canada, they had 400 yards, and then so it's a nice little sandwich there. So it really was Matt Canada, but I'm still not
Disgusting
really
sandwich.
I'm not really convinced still with Kenny Pickett. I still need to see a
Hmm.
lot more. Um, and frankly, with this offense, again, the 16 points against the Bengals and what was a close game. I think the Cardinals are going to be able to keep this one very close. I do think the Steelers are going to win, but needless to say, I'm still looking at that offense of yours, going like, man, the, you know, Kyler Murray, if he wants, he
I
could
do.
potentially try to take this one over. And I don't
Yeah.
know if, for instance, if let's say the Cardinals get out to an early lead, let's say it's 10-0, if that Steelers offense is going to be able to come back. I don't think the Cardinals defense is all that great, but we've pretty much seen with Matt Canada, without Matt Canada, touchdowns are probably easier to be scored on your defense than your offense.
Yeah, and I mean that's just it. The points will come. Last week was an important step. Being able to gain those yards, outgain our opponent for the first time this season as well, which was very important. The rest will start to come. And I mean, really, if not for that really awkward play in the first half, the Jalen Warren fumble with Deontay Johnson just not giving a fuck and giving up on the play. If Johnson jumps on that ball because it was at his feet, I think we score there and we end up with 23 points. And I've said it all season long. We don't need to put up 30 points, 35 points a game. We need 19 to 23 points a game. We will win every game with this defense. And so that was the only reason I felt it was that close was that one hiccup with the Jalen Warren fumble and then the Deontay Johnson not carrying. Um, I don't like the fact that they're running the ball up the middle with Jalen Warren on third and short when you got Najee Harris there, who's running like a beast last week. You could tell he might have been the happiest of everybody that Matt Canada was gone. I think with how he was running.
Yep,
Yeah.
without a doubt. But yeah, we both have the exact same there. Both picking
Yeah.
Steelers for the money line and both picking the Cardinals on the spread to keep it clear. But now moving over to the Dolphins taking on the Commanders, where they currently have a 9-point favorites in this one. And yeah, the Dolphins, they have been just a phenomenal team all year long. They've had
Hmm.
their ups and downs, and just taking a look at the Commanders, pretty much they have nothing on defense. They looked at Montez Sweat and Chase Young and said, please go away.
Hmm.
Fired Jack Del Rio after that, which you kind of got to feel bad for Jack Del Rio. He walks in one day and he's like, okay, your two best edge rushers are now gone. Make sure this defense is still good. And he's like, we have no secondary. What do you want me to do? And now we
Hmm.
have no edge rushers? Great. And then they're like, we're going to fire you after giving up, I think it was plus 30 points. And I can't really see this Commanders team doing a whole lot of damage to this Miami Dolphins team. Miami, I think, probably both gets the win and covers that 9 points, which for me, anything above 6 points is tough for me to pick. But
Yeah.
with just how the Commanders have been doing this year, they give up the most amount of sacks in the league, and Miami has been able to get after the quarterback a little bit here. But I think ultimately Tua, Tyreek, they're just going to be on the same page. Ain
Yep.
Chain is also back, so there's no worry with him. I think it's going to be a big, big day for that Miami offense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. This Miami team, when they play against a team with a losing record, they look like the best team in the league. And that's exactly what I think we're going to see this week is just a superstar, you know, team that goes out there and lights it up and they're going to decimate the Commanders. The Commanders had some ups, but all of those were pre-week 4.
Yep.
Since then it has just been a downhill plummet.
Pretty
This
much ever
team,
since they lost to the Bears, it's been one of those things of just like, okay,
yeah,
time to call it in, pack it up.
right? Exactly. They need to make a lot of changes there. Coaching staff all the way through. Whether you decide to go with Sam Howell or not, that doesn't matter. A lot of other changes have to happen before you even start talking about who your quarterback of the future is going to be for
Yep.
this organization. And so, yeah, I do agree. Dolphins money line for sure, and I think they blow this spread out of the water.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be quite that 50-point difference that they had against the Broncos, but, you know,
No, but I think it's probably going to be a 25-point difference.
maybe, maybe.
I'm thinking they'll put up 35 to 40, and unless Brian Robinson goes off for the Commanders and gets himself a couple of touchdowns, what are the Commanders going to do to answer back? Nothing. Like they're going to get maybe 10 points. And so,
Exactly. But now, speaking of the Denver Broncos, they are taking on the Houston Texans in what should likely be probably the best game of the 11 a.m. window.
mhm.
Which, saying that out loud, if you were to say to me at one point, we would watch the Broncos and the Texans at the beginning of the year, and this was going to be a really, really good game to watch, I would have
Yep.
looked at you and been like, shut up, stop talking, you
Yeah.
don't know football.
Stop hanging out with Aaron Rodgers smoking that ayahuasca or whatever.
Yeah, like get out of your darkness, retreat.
Yeah.
Reality. If you would have said to me 5 weeks ago this was going to be a good matchup, I would have been like, yeah, probably for the Texans.
Right?
But the Broncos, they Sean Payton has looked at this team and said, and now we're good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he
they've
turned it
gone
around.
they without a doubt, and they are currently the dogs at minus or +3, so the Texans are favored in this one. But I actually have the Broncos winning this game. I think they have just been so consistent. They have looked so much better, and this is really weird for me to say because
Hmm.
we have bashed the Broncos so much to the point where we were calling them the Donkeys. They didn't even deserve the Broncos name, but now they do, and I think I really like this Texans team. I love CJ Stroud. I love Will Anderson. I love what they've been doing with that team. But I think this Broncos team, they are just riding hot right now. And I think they're going to beat the Texans. So I'm taking moneyline Broncos. And obviously, if I'm picking moneyline Broncos, I'm picking the spread for them too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this, if not for one of the games we have later on, this would have been the game of the week for sure with how good these teams have both been playing. I mean, Broncos are on a 5 game streak right now.
Yep.
They are lighting it up. It's not always fancy, it's not always pretty. Sometimes it's that last minute touchdown to Sutton that wins it, but they're finding ways to win, which is, textbook of a Sean Payton team.
Yes.
We said it last week. We may have written this team off a little too early. We expected Sean Payton to turn it around immediately, and he didn't. And we were like, never mind, this is just not good. He's managed to do it finally. The
Yep.
defense is firing on all cylinders. The offense is moving the ball consistently. And at a 5 game winning streak, I agree. I can't go against them right now. And then I've also got some selfish reasons here as well. I need the Texans to get a couple more L's in that column because they hold the tiebreaker with my Steelers for that wild card spot. So just in case we can't make it to the division, I need the Texans to fall off a little bit. So I am also taking the Broncos, both money line and spread here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now moving forward, where we have a pretty bad game on paper where we have the Carolina Panthers taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are currently favored at -3.5 over the Panthers, and this is gonna be an interesting game to say the least. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers started out really hot to start the year, but since have cooled down a lot. But the Carolina Panthers are just that bad, and I think you're gonna see the Panthers struggle again against this Buccaneers team. Their defense is pretty decent still. And I think Baker Mayfield, I know you really, really don't like Baker Mayfield, but he's performed fairly decently this year. Has he been perfect? No. Has he been a franchise quarterback? No. But you know what? He's doing kind of what he needs to do in
Mm-hmm.
times. And I think going up against this Carolina Panthers team, they're going to walk away with the win. And I'm also going to pick them for the line at 3.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with you. And I mean, but this game will make Baker Mayfield look good because the Panthers are just that bad, you know? And you're right, they've fallen off a lot. They started hot and they've been up and down since. I know Baker's been dealing with some injury issues, as has Godwin and Evans. I assume Rashad White as well. So this is a banged up Bucks team that at this point has to keep pace with the Falcons, and I think they're going to go in knowing that, and they will get the win here against the Panthers. There's very few teams where I think the Panthers would be able to hang. I didn't think the Texans were going to be one of them, and that's where they got their one win from so far. So this is easy pick Buccaneers money line and to cover that spread by far. Yeah, like there's no way the Panthers are keeping it close.
This feels like a get right game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
It it feels like a yes, it feels like a get right game, but it feels like it's going to be a fraudulent get right game.
Yes,
They're
yeah.
they're going to look good, and everybody's like, "Oh, they've got it together now," and it's like, no, that was the Panthers.
Yeah.
You were playing against toddlers, so
In their
that doesn't
quarterback,
count,
legitimately, yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't count as get right. So that's the only thing is, I think they need to look at this game as a way to fix some of the holes, some of the problems they've had. but they need to keep looking forward to next week because beating the Panthers does not mean that you're good again.
No. My Bears have beat the Panthers, and that's not an accomplishment.
No.
Obviously, I'll chat about them a little bit later. The Cleveland Browns are taking on the Los Angeles Rams in a game that I kind of look at and I go, it's really tough to kind of pick because both teams are both good, but they're also bad. And you
Hmm.
also have elite Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns this week. And when I say elite, I mean he's utter dog shit, and I don't know where that. Only a Ravens fan would ever say Joe Flacco was elite during his time. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, well, obviously we'll chat about that a little bit later. But the Rams are currently favored here at -4 in this game. And you know what? The Rams have looked better as of late. And again, elite Joe Flacco, I don't have a lot of faith in. This Cleveland defense, I do have a lot of faith in, however, so I think they're going to keep it close. I think the Rams are going to win this game, but I think the Browns are going to cover the spread at -4.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because it is. The Rams offense is firing really well right now that Matt Stafford is back playing a little healthier. It's still concerning how little Cooper Kupp has been able to give to this offense, but when you've got Puka Nakua and Tyler Higbee and Kyron Williams coming back last week and lighting it up, you've got a lot of other options there.
Yeah,
And then yeah, this Browns defense is elite most of the time, but what happened last week?
true.
Like that's we finally saw them them falter a little bit, and that is the only concern with me about whether they can cover this spread because I am taking the Rams money line here, but if the Rams get ahead by enough, I don't think the Browns are good enough to come back and keep it close.
Yeah,
And so I don't think the Browns are going to be able to cover the spread here because, you lost Deshaun Watson, you lost DTR, PJ Walker's not great all of a sudden. Maybe you shouldn't have benched him in favor of DTR because I think you hindered his confidence by doing that. And then you bring Joe Flacco in now, and I think you're going to do is you're going to lose your third quarterback in 5 weeks when Aaron Donald absolutely destroys him on a play throughout this game. It's going
yeah,
to happen. And then PJ Walker's back in and going, great. Now I'm the fourth string fucking quarterback trying to deal with this Browns team. Why did I sign here?
yeah.
Yeah.
Just the most insane thing, Joe Flacco. You know what? I'll save my rant for Joe Flacco in Rant Street a little bit
Right.
later because it's one of
Browns
those.
doing Browns things.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
But now moving over to what is surely to be the game of the week, where we have a rematch of the NFC final from last year, the 49ers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was a game that everyone had circled coming into this year when we found out they were going to play each other. And boy, oh boy, it should be one for the ages. The 49ers, after stumbling a little bit midway through the season, or midway through the part of this season, they have looked every bit of
Hmm.
scary that we thought they were. And the Eagles, they're still finding ways to win, man. Currently the 49ers are favorite by 3 points in Philadelphia, which is crazy to think about. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think this 49er team comes in, they have a lot to prove. And they're saying, you know what, we struggled at a couple points this year. We didn't get the win last year when we thought we were the better team. And the only reason you guys won was because our quarterback was out. I think the 49ers take this one, and I think they take the spread as well.
Yeah, and you hit it perfectly right at the end there with the quarterback being out. And I've said it week in and week out with this 49ers team. It Their talent depends on health. If they're all healthy, they're the best team in the league.
Yep.
If they're missing one of those pieces, they drop all the way to maybe 10th. Like they just can't hang losing one of these key pieces. Right now, they're healthy. And if they stay that way all throughout this game against the Eagles, then I do agree they will win. And I see no reason why. We haven't seen dirty play or anything like that from either of these teams. So I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. Um,
I think it's going to be a
I think
bloodbath.
I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout myself. I expect both these teams to be going up and down the field scoring points. And it surprised me last week, that Eagles Bills game. I didn't think that was going to be as good as it was, and unfortunately, I thought this week was going to be that game, and I don't think the Eagles have it in them to do that twice.
The
And
Eagles
so
have
that's
played a
why
lot of really close games, and I
and
think,
they've still got more to come. They've still
yeah,
got the Cowboys coming up as well. And so I don't, they've got to fall at some point, and I think this is it.
yeah.
I do think the 49ers are going to go into Philadelphia, get the win here. That spread is difficult, though. Like, the Eagles, they find ways to hang in games.
They find ways to
And I
win.
think, yeah, and I think they will find a way to hang in this one. I just don't think they'll be able to win. So I think the Eagles will cover that spread, but the Niners will win.
So moving over to Monday or Sunday night football, where we get to listen to Chris Collinsworth slobber the knobber of Patrick Mahomes while he takes on the Green Bay Packers. So Sterling, I'll let you take this one away.
Well, Jordan Love, he's, the MVP of the future, don't you think? I mean, he's been playing so well. He's been lights out the last few weeks. We might see him upset Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs coming into Lambeau. No, I'm just fucking with you. Um, yeah, the Chiefs, they've been rolling. They've been getting better every week. They keep showing little weaknesses here and there. That being said, Love has been playing much better the last few weeks. And I think he will continue that play. We haven't seen him falter in, I think, 3 games now. I think he's found his stride. And so I do think the Packers are going to be able to make a game of this because it's at Lambeau Field. I'm not sure what the weather's supposed to be like, but if it's a little colder and maybe a little snowy, it might give the Packers a chance at an upset. But ultimately, I am picking the Chiefs to win here. Um, they need a bounce back from a couple of their players, though. Kelsey needs to start doing a little bit more again. I don't know if he's playing hurt or what, but he just hasn't been that game changer that the Chiefs need him to be if they're going to win a championship this year.
Yeah, I think the recent string of success for Jordan Love has been him playing a couple of bad defenses. Like the Lions
Mhm.
defense the last couple of weeks has just not shown up, and the Chargers defense is also pretty suspect. And I think Jordan Love, he's kind of been given a little bit, but when he faced off against that, Steelers defense, he looked terrible. He looked horrible.
I wouldn't say he looked. I mean, he kept them in that game.
Mm,
Like they kept fighting in that game. Like he showed some resilience. He looked bad in at the end, because he threw 2 picks in the final 5 minutes. But to be fair, a lot of quarterbacks do that against this Steelers defense,
yeah,
and so that's a hard one. Like that. That's my only thing is early in the season, he was the cause of them losing games, whereas now it feels more like he is the cause of them still being in it at the end.
I think you're gonna
I
see
feel like there's
him
been a
get
bit
kind
of
of
a shift.
exposed against this Chiefs defense. It's weird to say that the better side of the ball for the Chiefs this year has been their defense. They've been really, really good, and their offense has kind of been one of those ones where it's like, thank you for keeping us in this game. We really do appreciate it. And I think the Packers they get hit in the mouth. The Chiefs come out and they're like, listen, we got Taylor Swift's lover over here. We're gonna play really good, and we're just gonna look at you, Green Bay, and going, sit down, go away. And I think the Chiefs walk away with this. I think they cover the spread at -6, and I think Jordan Love plays a bad game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that I think the Chiefs will cover the spread there. I think they win by a touchdown or more for sure.
Now moving over into Monday Night Football, December 4th, the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and currently the Jaguars are sitting at -9 up against the Cincinnati Bengals. And to be honest with you, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
The Bengals pretty much without Joe Burrow here at the moment, there's no real reason to even really think that they're going to be much of an opponent. I think the Jaguars are looking at this going, thank God that Joe Burrow isn't in this game, because it is going to be a hell of a lot easier for us to win. And Jake Browning,
Yeah.
unfortunately, sure, he's a poor man's Joe Burrow, but he's a poor man's Joe Burrow, which you don't want to be that. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to have a pretty comfortable game here. I think they're going to win on the money line, and I do think they're actually going to somehow cover the spread. And again, like I said, I'm not a massive fan of those -7 or above type of spreads, just because it's pretty tough to cover those. But I've seen what this Bengals offense is without Joe Burrow, and I don't think they're going to be able to do much.
Yeah, and that's just it. You know, the Bengals looked like maybe they might be able to hang for about a quarter and a half last week when they started with Jake Browning, and then the Steelers figured him out and they tore him apart
Yep.
from that point on, and that is pretty much it. I think all the other teams around the league would be happy to not be having to face Joe Burrow. You know, prior to that injury, like when we were talking earlier about Dak Prescott being the favorite for MVP, I would have been like, fuck no, Joe Burrow
Mm-hmm.
is the MVP this year.
Yeah,
But with him being
until that
out, that's
injury, it was
he,
really Joe Burrow's season. After those
it was
first 4 weeks of kind of up and down, him
playing
getting
hurt.
healthy, it was
Yeah,
like once he got back, it was like, and here's your crown, Mr. Joe.
exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I agree that the Bengals without that, they really don't have much of anything to stand on. Their defense hasn't been great this year. The running game hasn't been able to get it going, which says a lot because, you know, Mixon's been great in years past.
Yep.
Um, the Jaguars are having the same sort of issues with that running game, though. You know, Trevor Lawrence has scored more rushing touchdowns the last few weeks than Travis Etienne. I don't know what's going on. I heard rumors that he might be dealing with a bit of a rib injury, and that's what's holding him back. But it hasn't been on any of the injury reports, so that's what makes me question this. You know, and I really do want Etienne to get back on track as well because, as you know, I've got him on my fantasy team, and he's like one of my linchpins behind CMC.
Yep.
And so that has to be a key for the Jags this week. I think they need to find a way to get back to that run game so that they're not playing this fast-paced shootout style game with all these teams because if they keep that going into the playoffs, they're going to be one and done once playoffs hit. They need to find a way to slow the pace down and get Etienne involved in this offense again. That being said, the Jags defense is going to have fun. They're going to get after Browning. I expect to see him get sacked 2 or 3 times at least.
If not
I
more.
expect to see an interception. That was one of the few things I picked last week in my bets was I was like, yeah, Browning is throwing a pick for sure, and he did. Um, yeah, the Bengals at this point, I expect them to pretty much lose down the stretch.
You're playing for
The
draft
Jet,
position at this point.
right? Yeah, you're playing to get the team better next year and hoping to God that Joe Burrow can stay healthy. This is a big concern for the Bengals team. They've had him 4 years, and this is 2 seasons he's had season-ending injuries.
Yep.
And that is not a good look and not a good rate to have that happen because you're not going to win multiple championships and be a dynasty franchise if your quarterback is going down to a season-ending injury every second year that you play. And so
Yeah.
they need to sort some shit out there in Cincinnati, which makes me happy. I was really worried about them for a while. Now I'm not so much. At least not for this year. We'll see what happens next year.
And
So yeah, Jags money
currently,
line, and I do think they will destroy that spread as well because I don't see anywhere that the Bengals can put points on the board.
yeah, currently if the Bengals continue on their trend, they are currently holding the 15th spot in the draft, and if they lose out, they're likely going to have a top 10 pick, and
Yeah.
which will likely be offensive lineman or whatever it needs to be. But moving over to next week's Thursday night football game, where it is your Pittsburgh Steelers at home taking on the Bill Belichick basically only New England Patriots. Again, you alluded to it earlier where last Thursday night they were literally showing like, okay, this is what's happening, and
Hmm.
it's T.J. Watt on this side, and it's oh god, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's not there on the field, guys.
Right?
Like, could you not think of like a Matthew Judon. Like, what are we doing? And the big
right?
story here is Juju Smith-Schuster makes his return to Pittsburgh. So
Yeah.
maybe a 300-yard game for him. No, no, no.
Uh, I mean, maybe if Tom Brady's throwing on the ball, is he gonna come out of retirement and play on Thursday? Like, no, this game doesn't concern me too much. I mean, it is going to be a short week, which sucks, but the Patriots are going to be dealing with that as well,
Yep.
and they suck overall. Um, I was sort of happy to see that they've flexed one of the Steelers, the following week's Steelers game to Saturday as well, because I was looking at it going, oh, we're going to have a Thursday and then a Sunday and then a Saturday, so we're going to have another short week. So now we actually just have back-to-back Saturday games, which makes me happy because that gives the team a good chance to rest going down the stretch here. Um, yeah, Thursday night football, Patriots, that should be another easy win. That should get the Steelers to 9-4, which effectively will continue that streak for Mike Tomlin of winning seasons. And then from there, it's just a matter of making sure we get in the playoffs.
Where they will be bounced in week 1.
Depends who we play.
Yep.
It depends. If we play, if we somehow get the Ravens in week 1,
You're screwed.
that no, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
no, how do you figure?
The Ravens defense will bully the hell out of your Steelers offense, and the Ravens offense will be able to do more than the Steelers defense.
And that game will still likely be decided by less than 2 points, as every single game between those two teams is when they play. And so that it'll come down to who gets to kick that field goal at the end. Will it be Justin Tucker or will it be Chris Boswell? Either way, that team gets to win the game if your kicker's on the field with 3 seconds left. So that's what that game would come down to, which we'll get to see in Week 18.
Yep.
Because that is the final game of the season, is Ravens Steelers, very possibly for the division championship and for home field advantage in that wild card weekend, for all we know. It's gonna be a feisty finish to this season for my Steelers, man.
Without a doubt it is. But now moving into our top 5 and bottom 5, as per usual, Sterling, I'll let you take this away.
Well, I don't want to speak for you, but I assume you're probably in the same boat as I am. Your top 5 and bottom 5 are pretty much the same as they were last week. Most of those top 5 teams won, most of those bottom 5 teams lost. And so my top 5 teams right now, 1 through 4, is almost the same except for the one team that dropped out of my top 5. So I've got Eagles at 1, Ravens at 2, Chiefs sitting at number 3, followed closely by the 49ers at 4. I had the Lions out because of that bad loss to the Packers on Thanksgiving, which for me elevated the Jaguars into that 5th spot because I do not respect the Cowboys enough to put them there.
So pretty much we had our number 1 and number 2, Eagles at 1, Ravens at 2. For me, I have the 49ers at 3. I feel that the 49ers are just a little bit more dangerous than the Kansas City Chiefs here at the moment, and unfortunately, I do have the Cowboys in at number 5. It's kind of one of those things where I'm looking at them going like, okay, you're in the top 5, but you are on massive fraud alert. The second that I get a whiff of another team that gets a little bit more, and if you struggle, then it's going to be kind of like you got to prove to me that you're no longer like you got to prove to me every single week that you deserve to be in the top 5, and I do think the Cowboys right now, with just what they've shown and the way that they've been playing lately, I think they're just a little bit better than the Jags and a little bit more consistent.
That's
And
fair.
they do have the 3rd best record in football right now, so it's hard for me not to at least put them in the top 5.
Well, I mean, if we're not counting the Thursday night game, they have the same record as the Jags and the Lions.
You know me,
Yeah,
I do
I
count
know.
the Thursday night games
Yeah,
though, so
yeah, and I mean that's just it. Like the Cowboys will stay out of my top 5 until they beat the or until they
until they
beat
beat the Giants. Oh, they've beat
the
the
Eagles.
Giants.
Yeah, until they beat the Eagles,
Yeah,
which
that's
I believe is next week.
yes.
So, they next week if they can win that game, they'll get into my top 5. But I put them there once this season already, and then they got themselves absolutely destroyed the week later. And
By the
I'm like, no, I
Cardinals
can't do it again.
of all
Exactly.
teams, yeah.
Right? And I'm like, no, not happening. You're not going in there again. You let the Seahawks hang with you when they are so beat up. They didn't have Kenneth Walker, so no run game. Charbonneau was not great, and then he went out hurt as well.
Yeah.
And you still let that Seahawks team hang with you. Cowboys are not good enough to be in my top five.
That's fair. But now moving
Yeah.
to our bottom five, where I don't think we have a lot of changes, but I'll let you start out.
No, the only change is my 28th spot, which was, as we talked about before we went on air, your Bears are finally, for the first time this season, out of my bottom five. And they are replaced in that 28th spot by the Washington Commanders. Following that, it is the exact same four teams as I had last week. 29 Cardinals, Giants at 30, Patriots at 31, and the Panthers at 32.
Yeah, so for me, I have the Panthers at 32, the worst team in football. I don't know if
Yep.
they would beat Alabama right now, which is hilarious to say because
Don't think
Alabama,
they would.
okay, a better team to say would be Michigan. I would say I think they would struggle against Michigan. But the Patriots are my 31st team in the NFL. I do have the Cardinals there at 30. For me, it then goes to the Commanders, and I don't know how, but the Giants are in my 28th spot, and they've managed to look decent the last couple of weeks with Tommy DeVito of all people at quarterback. But yeah, I also have my Chicago Bears for the second time this year, leaving my bottom five. And yeah, so those are top and bottom fives for each of us here. Sterling, I know you got a couple of bets coming up here, so take us through those, my good friend.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot I saw that I liked this week for pre-manufactured bets or bet boosts, however you want to call them on some of these sites. One of them I did like was that Chargers game. Uh, I saw the Chargers taking the money line with Austin Eckler getting an anytime TD and Justin Herbert to throw for over 300 yards, and that had plus 900 odds. And so that I felt was a very good bet against a terrible Patriots team they're going up against. I do expect Eckler to be able to get in the end zone and Herbert to be able to put up a bunch of yards against them, and no doubt that they're taking the money line there. So that should be an easy bet. Other than that, I really struggled. There wasn't a whole lot that I was seeing. The only other one I saw was the other LA team actually was the LA Rams taking their money line with Kyron Williams getting 2+ touchdowns. I I picked that because he came in real hot last week after coming back from injury. He looked really good. Unfortunately, they are going up against one of the better run defenses in the league, so I don't know if that's going to happen. So, I mean, be a little more wary taking a bet like that. And I believe that one was only like plus 600 odds or plus 650 maybe. So it's not great, and I don't think it's super likely to happen. But Kyron Williams was a lot of fun to watch last week, and if they can keep that rolling, then I don't think we have to worry about the fact that Cooper Kupp has not done really anything since he came back from injury.
Yeah. I do not have any bets here for this week. I unfortunately did not have the time to properly evaluate and look at them due to me working the last couple of days. And
Mm-hmm.
so, again, I don't want to speak on those, but those are some of our bets for this. And now moving into our favorite time of the podcast in Rant Street. And normally this is where we like to bash our teams, but now we get to chat about our teams kind of in a positive light, I feel like, for the first time. And then we get to bash some other people. But starting out with elite Joe Flacco, uh, I don't know why the Browns would decide to go with him. Granted, the rest of the quarterbacks that you've had played this year, Deshaun Watson didn't look amazing. DTR didn't also look amazing. But then also bringing in PJ Walker, he's what he is. He was an XFL quarterback. Made some plays last year for Washington, but yay, they were still a bad team last year. Um, you know, and you look at Joe Flacco, he was with the Jets last year. They didn't bring him
Mm-hmm.
back. And so pretty much for the entirety of this year, he's been sitting on his couch and only been with the team for I believe a week, and they're already giving him the start. So that just shows how little confidence they actually have in PJ Walker. And man, like I just don't think I honestly think Joe Flacco was just a sacrificial lamb this into this game. It's going to be Aaron Donald looking at this going, yes, the already old Joe
Yep.
Flacco, who was never mobile really to begin with, I'm going to feast today. And yeah, I kind of look at that. I'm like, yeah, can you play Joe Flacco against my Chicago Bears in a couple weeks, please?
That's what I was saying, man. I was like, fuck, we've already played the Browns twice. Like, why? Why can we not have Joe Flacco in a Browns uniform? We would love that.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. This is just I feel like the Cleveland Browns were frantically calling retired quarterbacks. And the only one who didn't laugh at them and hang up the phone was Joe Flacco. Philip Rivers, like, no, I just had my 14th kid. I'm getting ready to field my own team next year. Screw you guys.
Yep.
Click. You know, like,
Tom Brady didn't even entertain the call.
right? Drew Brees is like, well,
I
I
can't
probably
currently
could
throw a
come in and
football
throw
right
with my
now.
left arm because I can't lift my right arm anymore. And
Yeah.
I'd probably still be better than anything you've got, but I don't want to put on that ugly Browns uniform. So, no, click.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
fucking
sure they
Colin
were
Brett. Hmm?
I'm
Sure
sure
you.
they were calling tight ends like Greg Olson like, "Hey, can you just like throw the ball every once in a while? Maybe like
Right?
RG3 will like, "Oh, hey, I know you were with us for a small period of time. Do you want to try it again as a start?" And he's like, "No, I'm
No, I
good.
don't.
I'd rather stay
Right?
in TV. Don't have."
Especially from a guy that earlier in the season was alluding to the fact that he might still be able to hang with the guys in the league.
Yeah,
You know,
he was
because
talking about,
they probably did call RG3, and
oh,
he was like,
without a doubt.
"No, I saw what happened at DTR. I don't want to get punched. If I want to get punched in the mouth, I'm gonna, let Greg Olson do it."
Yeah,
Like, fuck.
I'm sure
Oh
even
my
Tony
god.
Romo got a call at some point, be like, "Hey,
Yep.
we know it's been like 6 years, but like," and he's just like, "I'm making like $20 million a year." Click.
Right. Probably call Big Ben, be like, "Hey, you beat us so many times. Do you want to come win one for us?" And he was like, "No, I'm gonna be the OC next year, and I'm gonna beat a whole bunch more motherfuckers." Click.
I'm just trying to think of other kind of like, do you think
Recently retired quarterbacks.
maybe not even like recently retired, but just like bad quarterbacks? Like I
Calling up
really.
Terry Bradshaw. Like, I know you're like 90, but come on, you just have to snap the ball and hand it off to Jerome Ford. That's all you gotta do.
Like we know you're old and senile, so maybe if we call him, he just think he's playing for the Steelers back in the '80s again,
Right?
and
We'll fashion our own little bumblebee uniforms.
uh,
Oh,
I don't even think you need to
I'd
do
say
that.
this.
You just look at Terry and go like, "You're playing for the Steelers again. This is the '70s, my friend." He goes, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, sure."
yeah, probably, probably.
Uh,
He is senile enough for that. Like, oh my
I wonder if
god.
they called
I'd say it
Troy Aikman again, just been like, "Hey,
right.
you're really good at analyzing. All you need to do is hand it off. Like, please, please." Like,
Yep.
they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel to go get Joe Flacco.
And honestly, there were better like he hasn't played in what 5 years. I would have been more inclined to bring in Colin Kaepernick to Joe Flacco because he's stayed in football shape because he's been trying out for teams every year.
Hmm.
He's been trying to get back into the league.
Yep.
Like that would have been a better option because at least he's mobile. Like Joe Flacco is going to be out there in a fucking mobility scooter. Like, oh my
If
god.
Colin Kaepernick would have, if he would have definitely wanted to try, like I'm sure he's probably looking at that going like, I might not have been great playing in this game, but I probably would have at least shown something.
Right? I
Like,
wouldn't have shit my pants when Aaron Donald decapitated me. Because Joe Flacco, he's going to regret this. I really think he is. I don't think he's going to have a good week. And you know
he's
what, man? I say it every goddamn year. Every year at the start of the season, everyone out there, even the NFL analysts, are like, Cleveland Browns look like they're great on paper this year. The Cleveland Browns are finally going to turn it around and be the team in this AFC North division. And I say it every year. I'm like, no, they're not. They're going to look good at the start because they've put a good team together, and then they are going to do Browns things. They're going to do what Cleveland does and slowly fall apart and decompose from the inside and become this trash team by the end of the year. They told Deshaun Watson he's not allowed to get massages anymore. So what does he do? He throws his shoulder out, jerking himself off. Like, this Browns team is doomed to mediocrity. Every year it happens. They've had one good year in 30.
Yeah, and that year just happened to be them beating your Steelers in the playoffs.
Big whoop. We lose to every team at some point. Like, fine, we lost to them 1 year in the playoffs. They had one good year. Did they go all the way? No. They got decimated the following week. We were hamstrung by tons of injuries when we lost that game to them. Like, it is what it is.
Yep.
That's the way football goes. The point is, we are in the playoff hunt every damn year. We're always in the conversation, even when we've got a terrible team, even when it's Matt Canada-led offense that can't gain over 400 yards, we're still in the conversation. The Cleveland Browns are, as I said, doomed to mediocrity. They are never going to be a great dynasty as far as I've seen. They've never been able to string it together for more than 6 months, let alone an entire season.
Maybe they should call Bill Belichick back and be like, "Hey, you were the last
Go
coach that
for it.
actually won us anything. Can you come back and maybe try to roll it again?" And him and his mobility scooter goes, "Yeah, I just got fired by the Patriots, so
We've talked a lot this season about teams that are performing badly and it being due to the coaching staff, and that's what needs to change. The Cleveland
I
Browns
don't
are
think
probably the
it's
only team that I would say actually has everything right when it comes to their coaching staff. They have one of the better coaching staffs in the league. Like, I like what they do. They are able to put good game plans together. Jim Schwartz has turned that defense around. Like, they're the only team I would say that the coaching staff, perfect. It's the rest of the team and above them that just completely falls apart all the time. And so that I feel for Stefanski and
yeah,
Schwartz. Like, they've done such a good job with a team that had aspirations and high hopes, and it's just they sold their future for a quarterback that most of us knew was not going to pan out well for them. Dude sat for almost 2 years. You knew he was going to come back and be rusty, which means in a physical division like the AFC North, he's going to get banged up. Like, if he's going to come back after 2 years, you want to go to a division like the NFC South or the NFC West, where, well, maybe not the West with Aaron Donald, but either way, like, you want to go
Nick
somewhere where
Bosa,
you're
yeah,
not going to get hit in the damn mouth by TJ Watt 3-4 times a game.
yeah, and of course, with Watson, he can't get those massages, so he's
Mhm.
just all tight and stiff more ways than one, and he's just not the same quarterback. And yeah, the fact that he's played, what is it, less than 10 games over the last 3 seasons, it's not
Mhm.
looking good. And you know what, like that move for Watson, it was like, okay, I get it, you're trying to go out there and get your quarterback that you think, but you had Baker Mayfield, who was coming off of an injury or
Mhm.
riddled season, who played the best year of his career, and you're just moving on from that because you think that this guy is going to be special, and you gave him a ton of money, which you handcuffed yourself. You have no draft picks. It really is the Cleveland Browns being the Cleveland Browns, and
Right? You look at what this team has put on the field, and if you take Deshaun Watson out of that equation, the things this organization could have done, the receivers they could have brought in, the quarterbacks they could have brought in, they had Josh Dobbs at the start of this year, who I know we've seen negative from him, but we've seen positive. Well,
without a doubt,
like at least he's been consistent and stayed relatively healthy. And he cost pennies in
hmm
comparison to what Deshaun Watson did. And that allows you then to pay guys like Miles Garrett and bring in. You could have brought someone in at the trade deadline to replace Nick Chubb, who's out. Maybe
yeah,
if you don't have Watson, you've got that draft capital and that cap space to be able to go, you know what? We're going to bring in Derrick Henry,
yeah,
things like that. But all they've done is they've handcuffed themselves for the next 4 seasons, and they're going to be stuck with this guy who either can't play or is playing garbage football for them. And either way, they're going to have to pay him $230 million.
yeah. And you know what? I think this Browns team, they're ultimately going to be in a position of where they're going to look at a guy like Miles Garrett and say, we got to trade you away. They're going to have to look at all their really talented defensive players and go, the only way that we're going to have a chance at righting the wrong and at least steering the ship in the right way is going, who wants this guy? Who wants this guy? Who wants that guy? And just trying to acquire as many picks as humanly possible and just trying to build up a young, really good team around Watson until his contract is up, and then you try to find that next quarterback. And again, we it's just so weird to look at that team and what they're doing, and man, it's embarrassing to watch in more ways than one. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I've watched it year in year out. Joe Flacco, he went. This was the wrong move. It
yeah.
oh I can't wait to see what happens there.
But yeah, now moving forward, we definitely talked about your Steelers a little bit more during the picks. So obviously, Matt Canada is gone. Your
Yep.
Steelers get their first 400-yard game. Kenny Pickett didn't look bad, didn't look great. He was just kind of the middle of the park. He did put up
He
the
looked
most
better.
yards. He looked better, but you granted from what we were seeing
Mhm.
previous, it's like you're looking at a guy that was going. He didn't look great, but he did a little bit better, and you're like,
Yep.
okay, that's why I'm saying he didn't look bad. He didn't look great. He looked
No,
okay.
but that's kind of what we expected too. Like again, this is middle of the season.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to change the playbook drastically. As we saw, it was basically they peppered in a couple of new plays that included the middle of the field, and the important thing was we saw that confidence. You know, that willingness to throw it over the middle of the field, to throw it into single coverage one on one. You know, whereas before it was like like if George Pickens is one on one, then I'll throw it to him. Anybody else is one on one, I'm not throwing it to them because
Yeah.
that's basically what Matt Canada drilled into him was you don't throw it to a guy unless he's wide open, and that was why he was holding it. You know, but there are still definitely things that need to be fixed for Kenny Pickett. I said it last week. I need to see at least 7 touchdowns from him across these final 7 games. He didn't get one last week. So I still expect those 7 touchdowns. He needs to get some multiple touchdown games, and these next 2 weeks are key because you've got two of the worst records in the league that you got back to back. You got the Cardinals and then you got the Patriots in short order, 4 days apart.
Yep.
You know, you need to get things rolling now and get things on the right trajectory because following that, you have the Colts and then you have the Bengals who are going to want to play spoiler. And then I can't remember who we play in between there. And then it's Seahawks and Ravens to close out, you know? And
Not
so,
easy
like,
games.
right? These are all must-win games, you know, and especially these Colts with where they're at right now. If they keep winning as well, and you somehow drop a game to them, then you've got two AFC South teams that have a tiebreaker over you, and both are sitting behind the Jaguars who are winning that division. That makes it really tough to get a wild card spot. So they do need to sort some stuff out. Again, I don't expect to see a lot of different this week because you can't change a lot this late in the season, unfortunately.
Yep.
We saw some good play calling, some better play calling from this offense last week, you know, and Sullivan instead of Canada. I'd still like to see them dial down the motion a little bit. There was still a little bit of too much of that pre-snap motion going on, and as we get into those tight games when it's late, that's when you get those bad penalties, the false starts, the offensive penalties when you're trying to string a drive together. Like we just need to dial that back a bit. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're third and short, as good as Jalen Warren has been, you give that ball to Najee Harris. The dude is huge, and he's finally starting to realize it here the last 3 weeks. And last week, especially, I don't know if you saw that one big run from him where he just ran into that crowd, and everybody's like, oh, well, there's a 3 yard gain. Oh, wait, never mind. He just went for 12 more.
Yep.
You know, like that is the Najee Harris that we drafted. And if that is what we're going to get going forward because he's finally happy that Matt Canada's gone, you start feeding them the ball again. You know, you use Jalen Warren when it's third and medium, third and long, 3rd and 6, and we got to pick up first down. Hell yes. You dump that off to Jalen Warren 2 yards beyond the line, and you let him make the moves to get that first down because you know he will.
Third and
But when
three
you,
and below, I agree.
right?
It's definitely got to be
Yeah,
Najee Harris, and
it
because
does.
him being 6'4", 200 and what 40
45
pounds.
pounds. Yeah.
Like you're basically just saying, here, Mr. Bowling Ball, just knock the pins down, and you're
Yeah.
hoping that Najee is going to be good enough to just muscle his way through for at
Hmm.
least 3 yards. And yeah, Jalen Warren being on the smaller side of things, unfortunately, he's just not that bowling ball type. He might be able to knock a guy over in space if it's a smaller corner, but
Hmm.
not
I
going up
mean,
against D linemen though.
no, no, and that's just it. Like we're running it down the middle, up the gut, with Jalen Warren. It has worked in the past, and on early downs, yeah, do that because he can. He'll bounce off that first guy and keep going. But when it's third and short, you've got the bigger linemen in there. Those linebackers are playing closer to the line and they're going for that gang tackle. You're not going to bounce off on a 3rd and 1. You're more likely to bounce off on a 1st and 10 because you only have one guy hitting you, not three.
Yeah,
And so those are the subtle changes we need to start seeing, Sullivan and Faulkner working in, which I think we are going to get. Like now that Canada's gone, we're starting to see all the reports coming out of the shit that he was doing and how he wasn't letting any of his coaches or coordinators have any say on the game plan or what was going into the game plan. Like none of them got to add anything or take anything out or tweak anything, nothing. He had complete control. And you can't run a football team like a dictatorship. Like you need to be able to listen to ideas and hear what guys are saying. We see it on the defense all the time with Terrell Austin, Fitzpatrick will come over and say, "Hey, like this is what these guys have been doing on offense. We need to make an adjustment." All right, let's see how
make
it
the
works this
adjustment.
drive. And 9 times out of 10, it results in the next drive being a turnover for our defense. That's why we're one of the best possession plus minus teams in the league this year. We've got so many turnovers for that reason. And that's another big factor this weekend is Minka Fitzpatrick is slated to return tomorrow, which will be great for our secondary because we have been sorely missing him back there. Especially last week when it was, he wasn't there and Keanu Neal wasn't there. It was pretty much just, you know, Patrick Peterson and Joey Porter Jr. on the corners. Try to do everything, please. You
Yeah.
know, you you got Demonte Kazi back there who can help a bit, but he's by no means Keanu Neal or Minka Fitzpatrick. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's gonna be interesting to see. But
mhm.
my Chicago Bears, man, they have the defensive side of things. And again, I would hope that this would somehow happen. I know it's not going to happen, but Matt Eberflus taking the demotion from head coach to defensive coordinator, because pretty much ever since Montez Sweat has joined that defense, granted it was a little bit slower to get in, having to go up against New Orleans and then the quick turnaround against the Panthers, but ever since then it's been like the Montez Sweat effect. The Bears have the number one rush defense in the NFL, ahead of the 49ers, ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles, ahead of the Browns, ahead of the Steelers. They have the number one rush defense. And the last 2 weeks, you're looking at them going like, okay, they've had 7 interceptions. In the first 10 games of the year, they had 6. You're just going like, okay, like I'm enjoying watching my Bears defense again. It's all starting to click and it's all going. TJ Edward leading the NFL in tackles. Montez
Mhm.
Sweat he has 3 sacks in the last 2 games. And you're going like, okay, this is what we brought you in for.
Yeah.
You've played 4 games as a Chicago Bear. You have 3. We're gonna take those numbers. You add up those, if he stays on that pace, he's 1 sack away from being at 10 sacks this season. Granted, he got 6.5 for the Commanders
Hmm.
this year, but if he gets another sack, well, guess what? That's
And then
4.
right, and then you add in another dominant rusher on the other side with a draft pick this year, and that frees him up a little bit more, and then you start
Hmm.
seeing double digits from him next year, maybe even into the 15 to 20 range by the end of the season. He could very easily be a sack a game player for that Bears team.
Without a doubt. And the next guy that I want to talk about is Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson, in my opinion, has easily been the best corner in the entire NFL this year. Granted, he only has the 3 interceptions, and he has the 3 dropped interceptions over the last couple weeks, which you want to slap him for because you're like, dude, make those interceptions. But when it comes to like you're looking at Blaine and go like, oh well, he has the 8 interceptions. Well, he gets burned. Jalen
Yep.
Johnson, he gets the interceptions, but he doesn't get burned. Troy Aikman gave the comparison to Deion Sanders in that Monday night broadcast, going, you know what? Like poor, Terrell Smith and Tyreek Stevenson, who have to play opposite side of him. It's like you're a young corner, you're gonna get targeted a lot because it's the Deion Sanders effect. You are not gonna have the other guy throw, and he is so much fun to watch. The Bears are gonna pay him. I know they will. They're going to franchise tag him or transitional tag him, whatever it's going to be. They're going to tag him, they're going to get him, and he's going to be a Bear for a long, long time. And man, it is so much fun to watch. The offense, however, in that game against the Vikings, it looked like Matt Canada's playbook where it was screen, screen,
Right.
screen. Granted, I won't say all of those are on our play caller, where I don't even want to think of his name right now because it's just slipping my mind. But it's one of those things where you're like, dude, it's not all on him. Like Justin Fields had some RPOs where he threw the screen, but at the same point, you're like, man, like you got to move away from that. Yeah, sure, Justin Fields has the option to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
don't call the screen on that third play. Like, don't do that. And granted, yeah, it was against the Vikings, and screens work against the Vikings defense, but that was embarrassing. The Bears are the first team in what has been, I don't know how long, but to win a game, but not scoring a touchdown.
Yep.
It's like, what are we doing? And I always went back to that little thing when Justin Fields came back. He has 7 games to get at least a 5-2 ratio of pass to fail for the Bears to even consider keeping him at the end of the year. Well, unfortunately, right now he's 1 for 1. He passed against the Lions, and then he
Mm-hmm.
failed against the Vikings. And the only reason that we're talking about this is because currently the Chicago Bears have the number 1 overall pick. If the Bears had pick 4 and 7, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would be okay,
No.
just get Justin Fields a better offensive play caller, and away we go. But unfortunately, when you have Caleb Williams sitting there and you hold that pick, it's incredibly difficult to not see them looking at potentially moving on from him at the end of the year. And
Yeah, yeah. That we've talked about it week in and week out lately, where that this is going to be one of the toughest decisions for your Bears organization, because and we've differed on it. I maintain like you should be rolling with Fields and using that first overall pick for more. Get another first this year, get another first round pick next year, and maybe even another player that can work with this team. Maybe somebody who can complement Jalen Johnson's defense. Whoever really wants Caleb Williams, somebody is going to be willing to pay a lot to get him.
I agree. And right now, the Bears community is split right down the middle. It's half
Yeah.
are on this side, half are on this side, and I'm kind of one of those guys that's in the middle, saying we need to wait for the rest of the season for me to make my decision. But if I had to lean one way or the other, I'm definitely leaning a little bit more towards the side of Caleb Williams because he is that level of player and he is that good. And but I'm still sitting back and going, throwing my hands up, going, you know what? We need to wait for the end of the year to truly go. But I'm not happy that he had a fail this early already. Granted, it was against a very blitz-heavy defense.
In prime time, that was a tough fought game. Like it's,
I
I
feel
know
bad for
it definitely
everyone
is a
who
loss.
wasn't a Bears fan that had to
Mhm.
watch that game. Because even Troy Aikman at the end of the game was like, after that, toss around play, they finally ended, and Joe Buck's like, oh, and the circus is over. All you hear Aikman from the he's like, thank God. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, you're right. Thank
Yeah.
God this is over. Sorry, America. Don't
Yep.
put us on primetime anymore. Please. Put us at the 11 o'clock slot on Sunday. Leave us there. We don't need prime time. We don't deserve prime time. We are sorry.
Oh,
That is
but your
what
team
Bears
should
fans
be
were.
better. You should be better in prime time, man. It's all about prime time.
We don't
You
deserve it.
know?
We don't deserve it. And I feel
Maybe
bad.
next year. Maybe next year you'll deserve it.
Well,
But
next
if
year
you
the
re
Bears are going to be a much better team, regardless of whether we have Fields or someone else, because
see,
we're
I
going
don't,
to have coaching, different coaching.
but that's my concern though, is come next year, if you're starting over again with new coaching and new quarterback and new system and everything, it's it's going to be that growing pain season again.
But
That's the
with the
concern
growing
where
pains there is that I
yeah.
still have enough faith in the roster that is assembled because I look at this
Mhm.
roster right now and I think you would agree with me that if the Bears had different coaching staff this year, the Bears would
Yeah.
probably have 7 wins right now. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
well,
maybe
and I
maybe
mean
not
like
7 but closer to 6. 6
well,
wins.
yeah, no, I would say you'd be closer to 7 because really if you have better coaching and better play calling, and you're not calling all these screens like I was used to seeing so much of this season as well, like you have a top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion. I think DJ Moore is one of the top 5 in this league,
Right now, yeah, with what
you
he's
know?
shown.
And well, and that's what's crazy, and that's right now with what he's been able to show. If he was getting the ball more consistently in a better called offense, he could be vying for that number 1 spot at this point. We wouldn't be talking about CD Lamb's been going off. We wouldn't be talking about AJ Brown had one hiccup week, but then has been putting up a bunch of 100-yard weeks. We'd be talking about DJ Moore putting up record numbers for the Bears and making Justin Fields look like a god.
Yep.
And
Well,
that's
when
what,
Fields has been in there, he has been lights out for DJ
yeah.
Moore. Like DJ Moore has only 200 yards when Fields hasn't been playing and no touchdowns, and the passer rating has dropped. But when Fields has been in there, um, DJ Moore has a perfect passer rating. He
Hmm.
has 6 touchdowns and he has over 800 yards. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can work with that. And
And
the most insane thing about that, if you look at the top 5 guys in terms of catching and receiving yards,
hmm
the 4 other guys that are ahead of him, because DJ Moore is number 5,
hmm
all of them have like 20 more catches than he does. He is the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL right now, and
yep.
it's insane, and I love it. And DJ Moore he set a record, or he is the second fastest wide receiver in Chicago Bears history to reach 1,000 yards in a season, dating all the way back to like the 70s, which just shows you how good some of our wide receivers have been in Chicago. But man, I love DJ Moore. I love that he's here. I want him and Marvin Harrison Jr. to be on the goddamn roster together because at that point, look the fuck out.
See, and that is the route that I think is the best way for your Bears to go in the draft is getting Marvin Harrison Jr., getting another edge rusher to play along Montez Sweat, and then having extra draft picks going later on and filling in some of those gaps and letting Justin Fields do it. And you're right, like the perfect world would be Eberflus just taking that demotion to defensive coordinator because he is great at handling this defense. What your team needs is a offensive minded head coach. With the type of team you have right now, you need that offensive mindset for a head coach. And it's unfortunate that in the league right now it is so defense centric when it comes to the head coaches. The majority of the head coaches that are seeing success in the league right now are defensive minded guys.
No, it's a definitely offense.
No, I think more the successful ones are on the defensive side of it.
Andy Reid's not an offense or a
No,
defensive
I
guy.
I know you. I'm not counting Andy Reid.
Just taking a look here at the actual standings, because I very much
You
disagree with
disagree?
you on this one. I think it's without a doubt the offensive-minded head coaches in the league are up
Okay,
there.
then maybe it's not a head coaching change you need. Then if that's the
No,
case,
I
maybe
think
you
it
need a
is a
better
head coaching
offensive
change.
coordinator.
I agree with that. I think we need a new offensive coordinator. I think Eberflus, in the terms of being the head coach, I don't think he does a good enough job. I think he needs to stay in his own little defensive world where he can be the number 2 guy on the team and be like, yes, yes, yes. But when he's the number 1, it's not looking good. I don't like it, and we definitely need to see that change. And you know, I'm praying to all the Lord Mighties out there, all the deities and all the gods, going, please just give us an offensive-minded head coach, and somehow Eberflus takes the demotion down to the DC. Please, I know it's not going to happen, but please make it happen.
Right? Because
Uh,
that's ultimately the hardest thing for you guys is like you're gonna have to part with that defensive mind already. So it's not just a play caller and a head coach you're gonna have to get. You're gonna have to get another defensive coordinator that's gonna be able to keep this defense rolling the way it has been.
my plan for the offseason is somehow we get either Harbaugh or Ben Johnson, and then
Yep.
Robert Saleh gets fired from the Jets, and it's like, yes, please come to Chicago, Robert.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I don't think so either. That's, again, like I said, it's a
No.
dream, it's a hope.
Yeah, just that third part, just the Robert Sala. I think you guys could potentially land Harbaugh or Johnson, but that would be in a head coaching role.
Yes,
You still
yes,
have to grab an OC somewhere and a defensive coordinator somewhere. And
without a
the
doubt.
market for offensive coordinators next year is going to be hot. There's a lot of teams that are going to be looking for the good. And
Mm.
you've got guys like, you know, Ben Johnson, he's not leaving the Lions for anything but a head coaching job.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. No
One,
way he's going somewhere else to be an OC,
no. Why would he? And
right?
he's going to be hired as a head coach without a doubt this year.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind Ben Johnson is getting a head coaching job. I would like it to be with Chicago. I'm pretty
Mhm.
much split. Either the next head coach is Harbaugh or it has to be Ben Johnson. Everyone else, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm good. I don't need. And yeah, but for me, I don't have anything more going in, and you're shaking your head that you don't. I'd like to just say,
No.
everyone, thank you for hanging out with us. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will be back next week for more football content.